Good evening, everyone. Welcome to our city council meeting. I'd ask everyone to please rise for the Pledge of Allegiance.
To the flag of the United States of America and to the republic for which it stands, one nation, under God, indivisible, with liberty and justice for all.
Roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Here.
Councilmember Dewey,
Here.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Here.
Councilmember Litzo, here, Councilmember Sears,
Here.
Councilmember Wertz, here, Councilmember Zimmer.
Here. Thank you. We will move straight down to public comments.
The public comments portion of the meeting is an opportunity for the city council to listen to comments from citizens. It is not a question and answer session, and the city council will not respond to comments or answer questions during this period. The mayor may refer any matter brought up to the city council to the chief administrative officer or city clerk if action is needed.
Do we have anyone wishing to speak?
Mayor and council, there are no requests for comment at this time.
Thank you, David. We will move on to the consent agenda. Is there a motion to approve?
Motion.
Is there a second? Second. All right. We've had one request earlier to pull item D, Resolution 6, 2024. So that will be put at the end of the agenda. Is item number 10. Is that it, Lori?
Here?
That's
Yep, item
okay.
number 10,
Very
under
good.
new business.
Thank you. Any questions or comments on the consent agenda? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
No, consent agenda passes. We'll go to unfinished business, Bill 11016.
Mayor and council, this is an ordinance appropriating $1,788,973.83 from the Certificates of Participation Series 2024 to the Fire Department rolling stock account, contingent upon the issuance of the Certificates of Participation Series 2024 and accepting the bid of Sentinel Emergency Solutions in the amount of $1,788,973.83. Pursuant to HGAC cooperative contract for the purchase of a Rosenbauer mid-mount 100-foot tower ladder for the fire department and authorizing and directing the Director of Procurement to issue a purchase order.
Have any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Litzo,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Wertz,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes.
Bill passes. Now, for the next item, we need to bring a substitute bill to the floor. So is there a motion to bring substitute bill 11017 to the floor?
Make the motion.
All right,
Second.
We got a motion and a second. Are there any questions or comments on that motion? All right, seeing all in favor of bringing the substitute bill to the floor, please say aye.
Aye.
No. We now have substitute bill 11017.
Mayor and council, this is an ordinance authorizing the city of Kirkwood, Missouri to enter into a lease purchase transaction, the proceeds of which will be used to pay all or a portion of the costs of acquiring certain property, constructing improvements within the city, and other costs related thereto, and authorizing the execution of certain documents and actions in connection therewith.
Russ, question, what's the reason for the substitute bill? So maybe we could have Shannon.
So we've
come
got
up.
Shannon here, and I think she's from Gilmore Bell, our bond counsel. And Shannon Creighton, please.
Good evening.
Okay.
So the reason for the substitute bill is the certificates were actually sold today in the market. So when we came before you a couple weeks ago for first reading, we did not have final interest rates or the final numbers to put into the ordinance. So that is, those are the changes that were made to the ordinance today. And Joy is here if you want to talk about how the sale went.
Yeah.
Mhm.
Does anybody have questions for Shannon or Joy on this? Okay, all right, we'll see. Thank you, Shannon. Thank you, Joy, for being here. Do we have any other questions or comments on this bill? Okay. Seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Wertz,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes.
Bill passes. We'll go to new business, Bill 11018.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance granting a special use permit for drive-through facility for restaurant and approving the B5 final site plan amendment at the property known as 1147 South Kirkwood Road, subject to certain conditions.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion and a second. Do we have any questions or comments? Councilmember Gibbons.
I have an amendment to add.
But go ahead and read it if you don't
Okay.
mind.
I move to amend Bill 11018 to add a subsection 22 under Section 1, which would read, prior to the issuance of permits, a revised final site plan shall be submitted that extends the proposed 5-foot wide internal walkway along the eastern edge of the proposed parking field.
Is there a second to that?
I'll second.
Okay, we got a motion and a second. Can you elaborate a little bit?
Well, at the last meeting, I recognized that, and I know that you said this was all workers, but you did say you cared about them. And that you,
I really don't remember saying that.
Words in his mouth.
yeah, really. They don't have an easy way of walking unless they get on this road, which, or access. But, we heard that it was, people were flying by there and they're going to be asked to put in a bump, but they don't have to if they don't want to. And that, or they could walk on the rocks. So it just kind of made sense that there's room there to have a walkway for them to get down to the crosswalk.
Before we go to council questions, planning department have any comments on that amendment?
So we spoke with Councilmember Gibbons with her concerns and heard it. And I think the motion from a safety perspective could add to the safety for pedestrians coming from that field. So,
No.
and we relayed it to the petitioner as well. And so we didn't hear any objections. So
No issues. Okay, all right,
Yep.
thank you.
Sure.
All right. Do we have any other council questions or comments on that motion? Councilmember Sears?
Yeah, may we hear from the petitioner on it?
I think we just heard from planning that the petitioner had no objection to it. I mean, if you would like to hear, we can
Yeah,
have a motion to
I
waive
mean,
Robert's rules.
I don't,
No, that's,
I maybe misheard. I thought he said he didn't hear any objections. I didn't hear him say they agreed to it.
well, that's, do you make a
So-
motion to waive Robert's
Yeah,
rules?
I moved to
Is there a
waive
second?
Robert's rules.
All right, and we can have a petitioner come up. Questions or comments on the motion? All right, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. All right, we could have the applicant come up.
Good evening. My name's Joe Rafferty. I oversee operations for Seven Brew in our market in Missouri. So we love the idea, honestly. So adding that extra space for our employees to walk, it was a miss on our end and a really good call out. So we are all for it. Absolutely.
Yeah, there you go.
I guess I'm the only one who does it, Joe. I mean, it seems that way. She's trying to help. Thank you.
Thank you very much.
Bob, does that answer?
Oh, yes.
Okay, good. All right, any other questions or comments on the motion?
Oh,
Councilmember,
not on that motion.
no, on this particular proposed amendment, motion to amend. All right. On the
Could I
motion
hear
to
the
amend?
motion? Could I
Oh.
hear what she's proposing one more time?
I move that to amend Bill 11018 to add a subsection 22 under Section 1, which would read, prior to the issuance of permits, a revised final site plan shall be submitted that extends the proposed 5-foot wide internal walkway along the eastern edge of the proposed parking field.
Okay, okay. Thank you.
All right, any other questions or comments on the amendment, proposed amendment? All right, seeing none, all in favor of the amendment, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Bill is amended. Are there any other questions or comments on the bill as amended?
I just have a question. Sure. I asked last time about the kelvins of the lighting and wondered if we had found that out.
So according to the lighting specs that we've been given, the under canopy lights are 3,000 Kelvin. The wall packs are 4,000 Kelvin. And the pole mounted lights can either be 3 or 4,000, and it's not specified on the lighting plan which one.
Well, at least we got some 3,000s in there. Amy.
All right. Anything else on the bill? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
No,
Oh, I'm
this is
sorry.
first reading.
First reading, that's right. All in favor of first reading of the bill as amended, please say aye. Aye. All opposed, say no. Bill passes first reading. Bill 11019.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance granting a special use permit for an animal facility major at 10-328, 10-330, and 10-332 Manchester Road, Green Tree Center, subject to certain conditions.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Have we got a motion and a second? Do we have any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor of first reading, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Bill passes first reading. Bill 11020.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance amending the provisions of the Municipal Code, Chapter 25, zoning and subdivision by changing the personal and commercial service use from special to permitted in the I-1 Light Industrial District.
Is there a motion for approval?
Motion.
Is there a second?
Second.
We've got a motion and a second. As we all know, Councilmember Litzo has an amendment she would like to propose, but we'll hold off on that. Does council have any other questions other than the potential proposed amendment by Councilmember Litzo? I want to get those out of the way. Okay, Councilmember Litzo, would you like to propose your amendment?
Sure, thank you. I propose to move, Mayor, I actually, made printed copies
yeah.
of all of this.
Yeah.
Should I hand these out now or
Hey,
do
Bill?
the motion first? Okay,
Well, I would read it first. And
Okay.
let's get a motion a second. And then we
Okay.
can-
okay. I move to strike the language in section 1 in the proposed ordinance and replace it with a new section 1, to add a new section 2, and to renumber the existing section 2 as section 3 with the language as follows. If you'll bear me out here, section 1, that the City of Kirkwood Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 25, Zoning and Subdivision Code, Article Roman numeral 3, zoning districts and principal uses, table 35-1, row, open quotes, personal and commercial service, close quotes, and column I-1 is hereby amended by adding letters PS/ in front of S to change this use category as permitted with standard special use. Section 2, that the City of Kirkwood Municipal Code of Ordinances, Chapter 25, Zoning and Subdivision, is hereby amended by deleting subsection Y in Section 25-36, use-specific standards in its entirety, and replacing it with the following language. Subsection Y, personal and commercial service. Subsection number 1, in the B1 and B2 districts, the maximum size of any tenant space shall not exceed 2,000 square feet. And then item number 2, in the I-1 district, such use is permitted only on lots with frontage or addresses on South Kirkwood Road, Grand Avenue, and Prospect Avenue. On all other I-1 zone lots, such use shall be a special use requiring approval through the special use permit review procedure.
Before I ask for a second, did everyone see that? I made the assumption everybody had a copy already. I know it was email. Yeah, just for people who need one, and then
Sure.
have before I ask for a second.
Right, because it's kind of a mouthful.
No. Wait 1 second so people can look at it.
Basically,
Once we get a second, I
Oh,
I
okay.
just made assumption everybody had a copy, so I'm sorry.
May I make another suggestion as part of your motion, Nancy, which would be in the title? Title currently reads an ordinance amending the provisions of the municipal code, chapter 25 zoning and subdivision by changing personal and commercial service use from special to permitted in the I-1 light industrial district. I think it now should be in certain areas zoned I-1 light industrial districts.
Um, yes, we would need to change the title
Title
of the,
in that manner.
if it were. Mhm.
Right.
Yeah, and
So that would be part of your motion.
yes, thank
Okay.
you.
Okay,
Thank you for that clarification.
everyone had a chance to read it. Okay,
Yep.
is there a second to that motion?
Second.
Okay, we've got a motion and a second. Okay, now, your questions or comments, and I guess I'll first ask, I think we understand what you're trying to do, and just maybe if you can briefly give more explanation.
Well, as you know, that what's on the table is a request by a petitioner who owns a couple of properties on Prospect Avenue to re-allow personal and commercial service in the I-1 district. That personal and commercial service was taken out of the code in the zoning code review that was approved and enacted in February 2021. So now this change at the petitioner's request, so that properties that he has in kind of a multi office buildings would re-allow without a special use permit. It would be permitted uses as it was years ago. I was on the committee that reviewed the zoning code in 2019 and 2020, and we had a consultant, and the consultant recommended that for the light industrial, whose like the purpose of light industrial is for light manufacturing, and we added language to encourage or at least to accommodate craft and maker spaces and those kinds of things. That it be preserved as light industrial, which if you drive over there, you'll see that it is fairly, I mean, it's light industrial. We've got Aerobox, we've got Mrazek Moving, we've got Fontana Contracting. There's also a few strip offices over there. You've also got the Puzzle Warehouse. But for the most part, in my view, it is light industrial. It's not sidewalks, it's not pedestrianized, there's not a whole lot of parking for a lot of the public foot traffic, those kinds of things, which we are focusing heavily on in the rest of Kirkwood. To me, this area where the petitioner's properties are is kind of a different ball of wax because it's right in the downtown area on South Kirkwood Road, just off South Kirkwood Road on Prospect. Just across the street, it's B3. B3 was considered, but it would prevent his properties from continuing to operate with a warehouse or storage space. So staff decided to suggest that revert back to the personal and commercial service, so that any vacancies in his buildings would just be permitted and wouldn't have to go through the special use permit. So my concern is that that corridor where in South Kirkwood Road, Prospect, Grand Avenue, that's all kind of in our virtual southern entrance to the city of Kirkwood. We've got some real potential for redevelopment coming in the near future down there. I can see, reverting it back to, for these properties right there in that heavily trafficked sidewalks, smart signals, all that kind of stuff, that this is a reasonable request. But in the light industrial, I just wonder, I think it would be more appropriate to have petitioners who might want to put these kinds of businesses, barbershops, hair salons, all of that in basically a light industrial area, that they do continue to undergo the special use review process to make sure that it's appropriate, that, you know, patron safety, that parking, that lighting, security lighting, all those kinds of things, you know, would meet the, you know, the test of it being appropriate over there. So working with staff, I met with Amy, and I want to thank her very much for meeting with me and listening to my concerns and coming up with this possible solution of, I don't want to use the word overlay, but it's kind of making a little district where we would allow personal and commercial service right there along South Kirkwood Road and Prospect and all that, because it's an area that's in transition, and I think it lends itself because of the infrastructure and just vehicular traffic, everything. It's, you know, to me, I don't have an issue with it. Over in the other area, I do think there are some questions about, you know, just safety and infrastructure and, you know, do we want those? Do we want to be more encouraging of light industrial and maker spaces and those kinds of things? And, you know, and have a higher review process for personal service where you do have higher foot traffic, et cetera. So, Amy, you know, she suggested, well, what if we just, you know, allow it for along South Kirkwood Road? And I said, well, that seems to answer, because originally I said I think it should be B3 over there, but then that would be a problem with the warehouse space. Anyway, it's kind of a complicated issue, but I think this is a possible solution that kind of goes partway to changing the consultant's recommendation for an area that I think, you know, thinking about it, it kind of makes sense, but to do a blanket broad brush change for the entire I-1, I think maybe it goes a little bit too far. So I appreciate council's consideration of this, maybe along those same lines, and maybe agreeing with me that we would just do a narrower application of the reversion back to permitted use for personal and commercial service, and see how it goes.
Thank you for the explanation. Russ, do you mind if someone from planning, Jonathan or Amy, comes up and gives their thoughts on
No,
this?
certainly. I think Jonathan looks like he's ready to come on up.
Mhm.
Thanks, Mayor, Council. So, yeah, I think Councilmember Litzo did a great job of explaining the rationale for her bringing the amendment up. I think the question was asked in some of the discussion about, you know, how, basically what we look at is how we're going to defend or explain, right, why we treat one property zoned I-1 in this area different from another area. And I think the reasons that Councilmember Litzo mentioned of that the context is different is what staff would be prepared to make that case. The Councilmember Litzo also mentioned we don't use the word overlay in our code. However, we have tools or mechanisms that we use that have that same effect. So as an example, we don't allow drive-through uses in our downtown area, regardless of the zoning district, but we allow it other areas, right? We have different architectural standards for the main core along Kirkwood Road. Even if you're an I-1 property there, you have different architectural standards versus other areas of town. Even in downtown again, if you recall, we identified the commercial corridors where commercial is required. And if you're off of those, you can have residential without commercial, even if you're zone B2, right? So these are all things that affect your allowed uses based on context and location. So with all that said, you know, I think we can explain it in that way. And as far as we know, it still accommodates the petitioner or the applicant's request. And it would be kind of an incremental step, I guess, to accommodate this current request and see how it goes. And if somebody else comes in the other part, we would address that request. I think I said at the last meeting, and again, not to detract from the amendment, but staff, without the amendment, we think it could still work and we could evaluate things as we go along, but we have no opposition to the amendment, so.
While you're here, and then I want
Yep.
to ask Mr. Hessel a question. I see that South Kirkwood Road, Grand and Prospect, Big Bend, what are the properties fronting on Big Bend in that area? Are they B3? Are they industrial as well?
B3.
Okay, all right.
Yeah,
So they're not, they're not effective. I just want to make sure
Correct.
they're not effective. Okay. All
right.
right.
Yep.
Thank you, Jonathan.
Mhm.
Counselor, what are your thoughts?
First off, I want to thank Nancy for sending this to us in advance of the meeting. and seeking the opinion in advance.
I know surprises are not a fun thing around here.
You're absolutely correct. And I think I told Nancy that my reaction was, it is unorthodox to have an industrial, any district where you have certain uses that are permitted in certain areas, but there's special uses in other areas. So it's unorthodox, but I can't think of any legal reason that would prohibit us from doing so. Maybe I should use the term creative rather than unorthodox. It certainly addresses what Steve Meskel is trying to address. And he has made arguments as how fair that would be and reasonable it would be to address the properties in his area while maintaining different industrial standards, if you will. Jonathan gave me all of those examples that he used. And my question to him was, will you be able to defend it? And he gave me the answer that he gave to you, which makes me feel very comfortable because I don't take the witness stand, he does. So as long as he can convince someone, as he convinced me, that it is something that has a reasonable basis based upon public health, safety, and general welfare. So I don't have a legal problem with it.
All right. And one final thing for the council. I was, Steve, since you made the application, do you wish to say anything on this? Well, I need a motion to waive
Move to
Robert's
waive
rules.
Robert's rules.
Okay. Is there a
Second.
second? Okay. Questions or comments on the motion? All right. All in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Aye. All opposed, say no. Motion passes. Come up, Steve.
Thank you, everyone. Whoops, just went away on me. There you go. I have another property on Leffingwell in Kirkwood, 333 and 335 Leffingwell. I actually used to have a gymnasium or gym in that building. I don't now, but I used to. And in that case, would that be allowed in that space if that were to have, like someone else would want to come into that building?
Only as a special use, Steve.
Only as a special use. Okay. Because there's a trend now, and I'm sure you've heard about it, these gyms that are going in bigger, larger warehouse spaces. And I've been called several times about some of my buildings. I don't have any vacancy, but so that would be, Leffingwell would be a special use. Clark, I have 500. Okay. All right. That was the one question. And the second question I had, the first part of the change was in B1 and B2 districts, the maximum size of a tenant space shall not exceed 2,000 square feet. Can you explain what?
Here, why don't you, Amy or Jonathan? Yeah.
So yeah, just for everybody, that's existing language in the code now that's for this use. So it's just keeping that language. So it doesn't affect I-1 property. So B1 and B2 are different districts, but it's a standard that's in the code now, and we're just carrying that over and adding to it. Instead of striking certain sections and adding to it, we just struck the whole thing and reinserted it back in. So it doesn't affect the I-1 properties.
Thank you, John. Thank you, Steve. All right, council, any council questions or comments? Over here? You're last. You have anything? You have anything? Oh, sorry, I didn't mean it that way. You're a Z, you're always last. Councilmember Sears, I know I had something.
Yeah, you know, I think it's great for us to consider this. I'm opposed to it. I think that the first bill that we saw was not complex and was straightforward, easy to apply and understand throughout the district, the zones. And it's this proposed amendment which makes things complicated. It's only complicated because of this amendment. I think it's, I understand it, and it's not, you know, it is creative, but I think it bothers me when we hear people being careful, like I am now, I guess, being careful to explain how a defense of a challenge to it would have some maybe great confidence in success, but that means that we're expecting, or we shouldn't say that way, means that potentially have to be in that position, which bothers me. So I would rather have it clean, apply to all of the spaces in the zones that we're talking about as it was originally presented to us, rather than complicate it with different treatment of different areas. And I think that's just, on principle, that's just the way I'd like to see things occur with all the zones and anything that comes before us, as we try to be as clean as possible and avoid potential arguments and frustrations down the road.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yeah, thank you. I think those are good points, but I think this is, you know, we can always come back and revisit, but I think this is a reasonable approach to it. I think it's a good compromise. We can see how this works. And if it doesn't, then we go back to it, but I think it's a reasonable attempt. I support it.
I'll just say, I appreciate this very much. If this amendment passes, it's fine. I'm kind of with Bob a little bit, just that it's cleaner to do it this way. I don't see a real problem over, you know, we're talking the Leffenwell area of a lot of these going in. I don't know if it would be, you know, an issue if they did. So I'm going to vote against it, but again, it's not a vehement opposition. I fully understand what the purpose is and appreciate. Do we have any other questions or comments on proposed amendment? Okay, then all in favor of the amendment, please say aye or raise your right hand. 1, 2, 3, 4, 5. All opposed, raise your right hand. 2. So the amendment passes 5-2. Are there any other questions or comments on the bill as amended? All right. Seeing none, then all in favor of first reading of the amended bill, please say aye.
Aye.
Say no. Bill passes first reading. We'll go to Bill 11021.
Mayor and Council, this is a bill. Excuse me. This is an ordinance amending Chapter 4, Animals and Fowl, Section 4.9 of the Municipal Code of Ordinances to provide an exception for service animals.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And a motion is second. Any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor of first reading, please say aye.
Aye.
Say no. Bill passes first reading. Bill 11022.
Mayor and Council, this is an ordinance approving the preliminary plat and final plat for a major subdivision. The property is known as 111 West Rose Hill Avenue and 711 South Kirkwood Road, and approving 2 modifications to the subdivision design standards in Chapter 25, Article 10 of the Municipal Code of Kirkwood, subject to certain conditions.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Okay. We have a motion and a second. Any questions or comments from council? If I can't tell if it's Councilmember Litzo.
Well, I apologize. I've been working on that other thing, so this kind of took me by surprise around 3 o'clock this afternoon.
Hmm.
Could I get an explanation of what transpired with this property? And thank you, Amy. Sorry.
No, that's a great
No, I'd
question.
be happy to let you know. So, as you know, Manor Grove in 2014 bought 3 houses to the north of them on College Avenue. They took down those houses and built a parking lot, and the city vacated College Avenue. The city required a consolidation plat at that point in time to consolidate those home properties and College Avenue with the entire Manor Grove property. Manor Grove also owned this lot at 111 West Rose Hill. And from what I can tell, the city did not require that be consolidated with the entire property, but they put that into their consolidation plat as well. So up until that point in time, it was a lot of record in the city, but once it was put into the consolidation plat, that went away. In 2020, Manor Grove sold that property to another party. And from what I can tell, there was a lot of things that weren't caught. Title company didn't catch that this was not a standalone lot. And when the owners came to us to see what they could do with the lot, we said the first thing you're going to have to do is subdivide it back out from the Manor Grove property. That original purchaser has since sold it to a second purchaser. And the gentleman who has bought it now also owns the lot to the west, and his parents live in a house on that lot. And he would like to keep the house on the lot that is there and fix it up and rent it to his daughter, actually. But staff can approve a subdivision as long as it meets all the requirements of the zoning code. But the house on this lot is only 1.6 feet from the side property line. And I forget what the actual is from the north property line. It's less than the 30 feet required. So we cannot approve the subdivision. It has to go through the major subdivision process. And so that's why it's in front of you. So they're asking for a modification, basically a variance, to leave the house in place with setbacks that don't meet the code.
So basically, you leave the status quo.
From what was 2014.
Right.
Yes.
And any improvements that the new owner is talking about
He's
doing?
talking about fixing up the house and perhaps putting an addition on it. For the time being, I think he did tell planning and zoning his long-term plans are to redevelop both lots, but at this point in time, he would leave the house in place. And the way the ordinance is worded, if the house were to come down, he would have to then meet setbacks and all of the requirements for new construction on the property,
Or consolidate the 2 lots into one?
whatever he wanted to do. They're both that lot and the lot next door are actually zoned R5.
Okay. So I know it's kind of a complicated, messy thing. Do you guys have a problem with us approving this?
I mean, it was a lot of record in 2014, so you're, like the mayor said, it is just going back to status quo. And we don't have, nobody's communicated with Manor Grove to say, what were you doing at the time or what were your thoughts? So
Seems like you could ask that question of a lot of people, but
Jonathan.
So, sorry, so just as Amy mentioned, so technically it's subdivision modification request, right? But it uses the same threshold standards criteria as a variance request.
like a
So-
hardship?
Right. So the commission, Planning and Zoning Commission did have good discussion about the unique circumstances of this property. And they had some concern to make sure it wouldn't be setting a precedent. So just to relay that to you all, it wouldn't be setting a precedent. They've identified the fact that it's for the existing house only. It was, a few years back, it was a lot of record, seemed a little bit like an oversight on some matters. And there are also specific circumstances in this situation. As Amy mentioned, the applicant owns the property to the west. The other adjoining property is an institutional use that was also involved in kind of creating the issue. So there are, and not meaning at fault, right? But so there are a lot of specific facts that, for your consideration. And when you ask staff, we don't usually make a recommendation on variances. We don't on variances, right? And this is the same level. So we don't give a recommendation, but we can point out the fact that the criteria are there and the threshold, and there are unique circumstances to consider in this case, from staff's perspective.
And to Jonathan's point, you only have a precedent when you have the same set of facts and circumstances, and I think it's virtually impossible to repeat these.
I would
facts and
agree, yes.
circumstances in every
Right.
scenario.
Yeah, I would not take that bet. I mean, the big thing seems to be that the setbacks are like minuscule, if you will. I don't know if he's talking about putting an addition, how that would work, but, since.
He's putting addition on the front. It is
Okay.
far back from the other houses on the
Yeah, it is
street,
kind of-
so
yes,
a front addition will actually, come a little bit
bring
closer
it
to the street.
closer, more in line with the frontage along Rose Hill. Okay,
Any additions, Nancy, would have to comply with our setback requirements, and if he ultimately tears that house down, then it would have to meet all of the
Yes.
setback requirements and come into conformity.
yes,
Again, you just can't repeat these circumstances.
right, right. Okay. Thank you.
Thank you, Amy.
Thank you.
Anything else from council on this?
Oh,
All right.
Nancy, thank you for asking all those questions. That helped a lot.
Seeing nothing else, all in favor of first reading, please say aye.
Aye.
All opposed, say no. Bill passes first reading. Resolution 7, 2024.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into a mutual aid agreement with the Missouri Public Utility Alliance for mutual aid resources for the electric department.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Second,
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Gibbons.
I was wondering if do we budget for, this is in the event of, there's some kind of a disaster that we can't cover. And do we budget for that? And what rates do we pay? Do we pay whatever they're going, the organization that comes and helps us service, we pay their rate? And if we go there, they pay our rate? I was just wondering how that works.
Mutual aid it is contractual and it's the rates. I can't answer that question without actually digging into the specifics, so. And Mark's not here. He could probably answer that question, but
Well-
I just noticed here, it says, there's a total budgeted amount and it said, although typical events cost an estimated 15,000. No cost to at this time because there's not an actual event, but
Right.
I mean, that gives you some idea that we're talking about 15 grand and they're set by contract, right?
Mhm.
That would be set by contract. So it's not just we pay whatever their rate is. We pay what we agreed their rate ought to be and vice versa.
And do we,
I believe that's
Yeah.
correct.
and do we, in our budget for events? For disasters?
We have
To
budgeting
use
for,
this, I guess is what.
Yeah.
yes.
so this is just basically an updated agreement, updated guidance on this whole program of mutual aid
Correct,
for the electric department.
correct.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yeah, in the actual MPUA mutual aid agreement, it talks about compensation and invoicing and documentation of expenses. So that should cover, whatever's in this mutual aid policy. It forces them to, use those figures when compensating or invoices for expenses.
But is that what I'm looking at?
That's for, oh, yes, that's.
I'm
for
wondering
all.
if we, I thought the question was, do we budget for we have a budget for emergencies. And in this type of emergency, where mutual aid, apparently we budgeted $862,500.
I believe that's for all emergency type services, not just mutual aid, however.
Well,
It's
okay.
like our
Yeah.
tree removal in case of ice storms and things come out of that budget.
Okay, thanks.
Mhm.
All right, any other questions or comments on the resolution? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Wertz,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 8, 2024.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution accepting the bid of Sunbelt Solomon in the amount of $81,814 for repair of transformers for the electric department and authorizing and directing the Director of Procurement to issue a purchase order.
Is there a motion for approval?
So move.
Is there a second?
Second.
Got a motion, a second. Any questions or comments? Councilmember Gibbons?
Well, I just wanted to point out that new transformers take 5 years to get. That is unreal. And so this is 5 transformers to be refurbished, but they'll be out for 3 months. And I have no idea, I don't know if 5 is a lot, a little. And while they're gone for 3 months, is their backup? How does that work?
Mark actually has a contract for temporary used transformers that I think City Council acted on a couple of weeks ago, where he uses a firm that refurbs transformers that we utilize while waiting for the delivery of ordered transformers. They're short-term usage, but they're stopgap measure until delivery.
People won't be without, except on Pearl. No one will be without service in the entire city. Does that answer your question?
Yes,
Okay,
thank you.
all right. Any other questions or comments? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Wertz,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 9, 2024.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution authorizing and directing the submittal of a Surface Transportation Program, STP application to East-West Gateway Council of Governments for federal funds for Grants Trail Phase 2.
Is there a motion for approval?
So move.
Move.
Motion and a second. Any questions or comments from council? Councilmember Gibbons.
Just, I think I know the answer to this. The application fee, if we're not awarded, that's refunded. Is that correct? And if it is awarded, does our fee go into the amount that, no, okay.
Councilmember Lutzo.
So I'm reading on the legislation request, and I was just wondering, in one of the paragraphs, it says, please note that the estimated cost of the project has been reduced from 5,970,000. So we took out $970,000 worth of something to get the cost of it down to 5 million? Am I interpreting?
My understanding is they reran the numbers and came to a lesser number for the overall project cost based on historical records of acquisition costs of railroad property throughout Grants Trail.
Okay, so the scope or specifications didn't change. It was more or
No.
less the estimation.
The estimation got, better information to come up with a more accurate, they believe more accurate. Now,
Well, I hope
I
so.
couldn't tell you that it's going to come in at that number, but they believe that that is a more accurate number than the 5.9 million that previously. was
And then
utilized.
maybe makes it more likely that we get the grant? Or I don't know.
Anytime you have a lower number and you're applying, usually you have a better shot, yes.
Yes.
Score better.
I'm seeing a head nod back there. Okay, good work. Thank you.
Anything else from council? All right, seeing Nothing else? Roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Wertz,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes.
Resolution passes. Resolution 10, 2024.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution of the City of Kirkwood, Missouri, calling for the joint establishment of a citywide transportation development district, authorizing the City of Kirkwood, Missouri to join with the Downtown Kirkwood Special Business District in a petition to create the Kirkwood Citywide Transportation Development District and authorizing certain actions related thereto.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
Second, questions or comments from council? Councilmember Lizzo?
Assuming this passes, it talks about a public hearing. I just wonder when a public hearing must be held or will be held.
Public hearing is
be
held
here.
over at the circuit court. It's not held here.
Oh,
That's in the petition. You'll see
Okay.
that in the petition. Under the state statute, and all of this is guided by a state statute, we have to follow the state statute with great particularity. So once we file a petition, the court, under the statute, the court will publish in a newspaper of general circulation for 4 consecutive weeks, notice of a public hearing. Then the circuit court holds the public hearing over in St. Louis County.
okay. Thank
City
you.
council is not involved in that. And ultimately, when the court approves it, the proposition that's placed on the ballot, the circuit court will handle that as well. Lori does that, but she does not do that under the state statute.
Okay. Thank you for that clarification, because I thought it was one more thing on our calendar.
No, nope, I think we're basically done after this for the most part.
I'm glad you mentioned it because hopefully the citizens of Kirkwood will realize that there is a public hearing, but it's over at the circuit courts. If they want to go hear what's going on, hear more about it and voice their position, we welcome them at that hearing.
Okay, thank you.
Just a brief comment on this for those who think this might sound familiar. It's because it is the city 3 years ago, I guess, November of 21, so a little more than 2 years ago, put this on the ballot for a TDD, and it did not pass. We had to wait at least 2 years to do it, and so the plan, assuming this resolution passes and the court does what it needs to do, would be to have this on the November 2024 ballot. And the main difference from 2021, where we asked for 1 cent for the maximum allowed 40 years, this will be for half a cent for 15 years. And we feel that's probably a better sell. It gives us additional funding to work on our public infrastructure, streets, sidewalks, curbs, and transportation needs. So assuming, again, this all goes as hoped, this will be on the ballot in November 24, and much more to be put out on this.
And Mayor, if I may, under the state statute, under the Transportation Development District, a project can include any number of things such as parking garages and things of that nature. The city council narrowed the focus of this project to streets, alleys, roadways, sidewalks, curbs, and public parking that's owned or leased or within the dedicated easements maintained by the city. So obviously, the city council is looking towards funding street improvements. So the language is very particular addressing street public improvements.
Great. Thank you for that, John. That's important. Anything else on this? All right, seeing nothing further, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Wertz,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes.
Resolution passes. And then we'll go to the item from the consent agenda, Resolution 6, 2024.
Mayor and Council, this is a resolution accepting the proposal of DTK Studios in the amount of $21,000 for photography and videography services for the city of Kirkwood for an initial term of 12 months with the option to renew for up to 4 additional 12-month terms pending budgetary approval. And authorizing and directing the mayor to enter into a contract.
Is there a motion for approval?
So moved.
Is there a second? All right, we have a motion, a second, and I'll first go to Councilmember Gibbons. I know you had a question today, and
I
that's why
just
we pulled it.
wondered how the electric department is involved in this.
Okay, this is actually for the electric department. That's why they're involved. The intent is for them to use DTK Studios for videos and photographs for its website, for the Kirkwood Electric website, their Instagram page, and their Facebook page. They're currently using certain videography and photography services and have been able to successfully communicate their activities to continue to enhance their communication with the public. So that's the purpose.
So it's only for electric, not the rest of the city.
Now, once they have those pictures, they can be shared with needs throughout the city as well. But this is for the electric department. And they use videography too. It's not just pictures.
Yes.
So they can video crews working and so forth.
I mean, to answer your question? Okay. Any other questions, comments from council? All right, seeing none, roll call, please.
Mayor Griffin,
Yes.
Councilmember Dewey,
Yes.
Councilmember Gibbons,
Yes.
Councilmember Lizzo,
Yes.
Councilmember Sears,
Yes.
Councilmember Wertz,
Yes.
Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes.
Resolution passes. Go to city council reports. Anything from anyone? Councilmember Gibbons.
Well, I want to give a big shout out to the water department, and Clarence and his crew. They really had to do a yeoman's job the last weekend. And I don't know if anybody, you got to see the tree on Taylor and Manchester, but, a tree was just absolutely covered from top to bottom. Really big oak tree with water that, it got on the house and all the bushes. So anyway, if you'd pass that on to them, Chris, that we're really grateful for all the work that they did. Just a couple quick notes about the library. This past year, they got over $68,000 in grants for different things. So I think that's all good news. And they asked for a grant from the library board and they received it. And this grant is going to, one of the parts of it is, it's going to be new equipment that can be checked out, like sewing machines and it's laser levelers and things like that, that you might only use once and rather than go buy one. But get this, there's going to be a Roku with 10 streaming services on it. So the next time they decide to put the Chiefs game on Peacock, we can go get a Roku from the library.
A big party at the library.
Pretty cool.
Big screen.
It's
Yeah. That's neat. Thank you. That's a great update. Councilmember Zimmer.
Yes. All of us here recognize the importance and excellence of our city employees. And tonight I want to give a positive plug to all of our city employees who do such a great job. The owners of our new Hello Juice location, Jen and John, were recently interviewed, and they talked about their new Kirkwood location. And they said they chose Kirkwood because Kirkwood encourages small businesses, which we do. We're a great place to have a small business. But they, in particular, talked about dealing with the city of Kirkwood and the city employees. They said that this was one of their most friendly city government experiences they've had. In fact, the city called them and asked them how they could help. That is just such a positive impression that we can have for Kirkwood and to encourage small businesses to continue to drive sales and revenues, which is exactly what we need. And we all know how excellent our city employees are. And to hear this, a public declaration of that is fantastic. So, I couldn't agree more. We have excellent city employees, and I just want to give them that recognition they deserve. Thank you.
All right, Chief Administrative Officer report.
Yes, Mayor, we did receive a application for a temporary outdoor promotional variance from the Alpine Shop, 440 North Kirkwood Road, to hold their annual spring showcase and swap from April 5th, 2024 through April 7th, 2024. And we request a city council approval by voice vote.
Is there a motion to approve?
So moved.
Is there a second?
Second.
And a motion is second. Any questions or comments? All right, seeing none, all in favor, please say aye.
Aye.
Say no, motion passes. And then Russ, would you address one other thing? We talked about it the other day.
Yes.
A few weeks ago, I guess, our meeting in December, we passed a resolution accepting a contract from Lockmuller Group, $630,000 for Safe Streets and Roads for All. One thing we didn't do in that meeting was really explain what that is and the grant involved. So do you mind doing that just so we can get it out there?
Sure, I'll be glad to, and Jonathan can correct me if I misstep on any of this because he's very.
Or
familiar
Jonathan,
with it.
whatever you
But-
prefer.
Well, I mean, I'll give it my shot at here. Jonathan's been up a lot. But basically, this is a grant that the city applied for through the Safe Streets for All program. It's a planning grant, and it's multifaceted. It includes the citywide speed study that we have talked about previously. It also includes the safe routes to school and the Southeast Corridor analysis as well, which focuses on Big Bend east of Kirkwood Road, particularly in the Milwaukee and Fillmore area. And for safety purposes, these are Safe Streets for All. It's part of the infrastructure, federal infrastructure monies. And Kirkwood was one of only 2 places when we received this grant, I believe, in the metro area, maybe the only one in the metro area when we received it. Is that correct? We were on the cutting edge, I know that. Yeah, so we're kind of proud of that. But this $600,000 is the total for the projects. We received $480,000 in federal money. The city's only putting in $120. Now the 30 is 5% contingency.
Okay. All right. Well, thank you for that. I think it cleared up a little confusion on that. And I probably should have made sure we mentioned that at the meeting, but thank you for that. Okay. City Attorney report.
Nothing to report, Mayor.
City Clerk report.
Yes, Your Honor. I have one thing to report on is a scheduled upcoming public hearing. We have a public hearing scheduled for Thursday, February 1st, 2024. To consider the following: vacating a portion of a public right-of-way known as Jefferson Avenue from Harrison Avenue to Clay Avenue between blocks 16 and 21 in the town of Kirkwood subdivision in the city of Kirkwood, St. Louis County, Missouri. And that's all I had to report on.
All right. Thank you all. Next meeting of City Council will be on February 1st, 7 p.m. This meeting is adjourned.